What is up, math superstars? In this edition of Mr. Peterson Presents, we're going to talk about objective 6.12, congruency. So you'll be able to determine congruence of line segments, angles, and polygons. First, we need to go ahead and review about lines and angles. So first up here, we're going to talk about a line. This extends forever in both directions. And so if we have 2 points on our line, x and y, we're going to go ahead and when we write this, we're going to write this as xy with a line over it and 2 arrows going in opposite directions, stating that the line goes on forever. Next, we're going to talk about a line segment. This line segment has 2 endpoints, and this line does not extend beyond these points. And so when we write this, if it's x and y, we're going to write this as xy with just a line over it, no arrows. And third, when we classify lines, we're talking about array. Array has 1 endpoint, and at the second point, it extends forever in the other direction. And so with this one, the order does matter. So when we write this, we're going to start at our endpoint x, and we're going to write y, and the line over it is going to show the arrow going in one direction, stating that this is a ray. Now we're still going to classify lines. So we're given 3 diagrams. Our first diagram, these lines just intersect one another at 1 point. Our second diagram here, it's about perpendicular lines. These are lines, when they intersect, they make 90-degree angles. And our third set here, these lines are parallel. These lines will never touch. Now we're going to talk about how we can write out different angles. And so if we're given this angle here, y is called the vertex here. So when we talk about an angle, and we can label this as angle y, this angle is going to be called the vertex. And so we have some information that we can gather from just this diagram here. And so this angle is made up of 2 rays. These 2 rays are yx, and we draw a line with the arrow, and our second ray is yz. And so we can talk about the lines here, but we need to talk about this angle right here. So we can write this angle 3 different ways. The first way is, we write this as angle y. The second way we can write this, we can use 3 letters. So we can use x, y, z. And the third way we can write this, just go in the reverse order, z, y, x. And we can notice something here. So our first example, we just have the angle measurement, which is y. In our second example, y is in the middle with the 2 other points. And our third example, y is also in the middle. So when we go ahead and use 3 letters for these 2, we got to make sure that our angle is in the middle of the 2 letters. Then we can talk about 4 different types of angles here. So our first angle is acute angles. These angles are less than 90 degrees. Our second angle are right angles. So you can see the way they write this, there's a little box here. These angles are equal to 90 degrees. And then we have obtuse angles. These angles right here are greater than 90 degrees. And then we have straight angles. So this angle right here, this angle is equal to 180 degrees. So now we're going to put it all together and talk about congruent figures. And so here we're given this clue right here. We said triangle ABC is congruent to triangle DEF. And so our first step is we're going to compare the sides. And so first here we have we have our side AB. So we're going to label that with a little dash. These dashes are called hatch marks. So we have to figure out now what's the side that is congruent to AB. So when we look at our clue here, we're going to take a look at the letters. So AB, so you see it's the first two letters. We can go to the second congruent triangle, DEF. When we go ahead and underline the first two letters, you guessed it, that's the line that is congruent to AB. This is line DE. So if we do this, we're going to match this up. So we find line D to E, and we're going to put a dash or a hatch mark there. So now we know that these two sides are equal or congruent. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at our second line here, EF. So we're going to find that. That's on our second triangle. So we're going to mark that with 2 hatch marks. And so when we go up here to our hint, line DF is our last 2 letters. So we're going to go up to the last 2 letters of triangle of ABC. So our last 2 letters are BC. And so we know that the line segment EF is congruent to the line segment BC. And we got to find that on our first triangle here. We're going to mark that with our 2 hatch marks. And our third line segment here is AC. And so when we go ahead and look at that, so AC, so here's A and C right here. So you can see it jumps letter B. And so we're going to go ahead and jump letter E on our second triangle. And we know that that line segment is DF. So we're going to mark that with 3 hatch marks because it's our third side. So we have the side AC and DF. We're going to mark that with 3. And so it's a real simple way that we can mark out the sides for congruent figures. So now we're going to use our same hints that we just did for the sides, and we're going to talk about how we can compare the angles of 2 congruent figures here. So we're given here is the angle of A. So the way we mark this on our first triangle is a little semicircle. And when we look at our letters here, angle A is our first angle, and it is congruent to triangle. In the triangle DEF, it's just congruent to angle D. And so on our second triangle, just like we did the 1 semicircle for A, we're going to use 1 semicircle for D. So now let's go ahead and compare angle F. So angle F, it's on our second triangle. We're going to give it the 2 semicircles. So when we find angle F, that's our last letter. And so when we go up and we can look at triangle ABC, the last letter is C. So that's going to tell us that angle C is going to be congruent to angle F. And we're going to go ahead and compare this third angle here. So we're looking at angle B is congruent to angle E. So real simple, we're just going to write that down. Angle B is congruent to angle E. And we need to label the rest of this triangle now. So for angle F had 2, angle C is going to have 2, and angle B, you guessed it, is going to have 3, and angle E is also going to have 3. And so you can just tell our first slide was we're comparing the sides. Now we just got finished comparing the angles. So now our last step here, if we're given some information about the angle measurements and the side lengths, we can now compare. We can go ahead now and compare these measurements here. And so what we're going to do for our first one, it says if the angle measure ABC. So when we're given that information, we're talking about angle B. If angle B is 70 degrees, then the measure of angle DEF is also blank. And so we know that these 2 angles are the same. So the angle measure E is also 70 degrees. So if the measure angle D is 40 degrees, then the measure of angle A, since these two were the congruent angles, is also 40 degrees. And then if we're given some information, if the line segment BC is 8 centimeters, then the line segment EF at the top is also 8 centimeters. And so now we're given some ways that we can compare these two congruent or the same figures.